For this presentation, we're very much focused on the college admissions process, so getting this started your junior year. So some things that we'll go over today, how to begin that college search, which could be a very overview if the student has already started this process, but for ones that not, it could be some really useful information. How to create your list and what type of programs that we use in our office, what to look ahead to for your senior year. We'll briefly touch on financial aid. We do another complete presentation in the fall that has everything to do with the ins and outs of financial aid, but we'll talk a little bit about it tonight. And then searching for scholarships, what the current senior class is doing now, what you guys can do to think about going into your senior year. So this graphic you'll see here, if the student has already kind of started that college search process, this could be very much an overview, or could give you a different way of thinking about it. So when we try to develop the list of schools, we look at these 5 categories. The first one being location and size. Even if you don't know what you might want to study, this could very much narrow your list down drastically. We have about over 4,000 schools in the United States that kids can choose from, just by knowing where you might want to go, or whether it be in-state or out-of-state, public or private. That could very much narrow down your list right away. It could also impact one of the other bubbles, which is internships and co-ops. So very similar, but also very different. So internships is something that students should definitely take advantage of. It's something that you're gonna do while you're taking classes. That's the biggest difference between a co-op. Co-op is usually you're not in class, you're working anywhere from 35 to 40 hours a week. Sometimes it could be paid, sometimes not. So it depends on the institution that you're attending. So big difference between the two. So if you're looking to have that as part of your college experience and say you want to study sports, you're probably not going to go to Vermont. So you might want to think about schools that have more of a sports-rich town, such as Boston. So to kind of keep that in mind. When it comes to majors and special programs, anyone have an idea of what the most popular major is that students choose to study in college? Any idea? Business? Anything else? No, it's actually undecided. Undecided. Over 50% of students that apply to college for their freshman year apply undecided or undeclared. So there oftentimes is this pressure that you have to know exactly what you want to do when you leave high school. And oftentimes students don't really know, and they want to leave their options open. So by looking at either major specific schools or some that maybe have more of a liberal arts education or have a lot of variety, could also expand or lessen that list. So keep those in mind as well. For academic services, every school has them. The time that they put into it and what they have accessible is going to be very different. So if you're looking for one-on-one tutoring, do they have it at the school? Is it free? What type of tutoring do they have? Those are all questions that you're going to want to ask while you're on a campus tour. Because every school, although they might have them, it could be very, very different from institution to institution. Same thing with disability services. If a student has a 504 or an IEP, those are not carried over into the college education world. So that's something that needs to be identified within their college application and once they're on campus. There will be things to kind of help them out, whether it be learning, physical, mental, emotional, psychiatric disabilities. So you have to identify that. You have to self-advocate for yourself. Because again, those will not be carried over once you're at that institution. So kind of comprising all 3 of these things, or all 5 of these things rather, is what's going to make that your college. On page 3 of these insiders that we've given you when you guys walked in, there's a couple websites that we use. The biggest one is through the College Board, which is called Big Future. Anyone used that website before already? A couple of you. Very useful tool. We use it in our office with those 60-minute one-on-one appointments with juniors. You can pretty much program that into exactly what you're looking for in a college. So it's very much geared towards you. So you can kind of pick and choose from these different categories, plug them into this website, and it will take that list of 4,100 schools that we have and narrow it down exactly what you're looking for. So you don't need a College Board account to use this tool, so if you want to go home and use this, you absolutely can. We use it in our office almost every day. So some other things to consider while you're going through school. So we know that the cost of education is rising. Every single year, it becomes more and more expensive to attend a four-year institution. So we know that a two-year route for community college and transferring on to a four-year institution could be a viable option to save some money. So some things you'll want to look into if that's an avenue that you want to take for your education is what type of articulation agreements do those community colleges have? Making sure you're taking the right courses in those either 1 or 2 years that you start there to make sure that they transfer successfully onto a four-year institution. So making sure that you're taking the correct maths and Englishes and social sciences. That way you're not falling behind when you go on and transfer. So you can work directly with the community college system with that, see what UNH and the state schools have for a dual NH programs. All of those are on these websites right here on this slide. If you're like me, that you're not a good test taker when it comes to the SATs, you might want to think about schools that are test optional. There's over 850 schools in the country that do not require SATs as part of your admission requirement. So if that's something that you think could influence either positive or negatively into your college application, take a look at fairtest.org. That will have a complete list of all the schools that do not require these tests as part of your admission requirements. So could be an avenue that you could take as well. And these are kind of just the, I like to call them extra things that you might want to consider when it comes to your college application. So if you find yourself in any of these categories, so if you are a student athlete and you're looking to go play Division I or II, you would have to be registered with the NCAA to even be eligible to play as a first-year student. If you're looking to go Division III, you will not have to do that. If you are looking into design programs such as interior graphic design or architecture, you might have to submit a portfolio. If you're looking into theater programs, you might have to do an audition. Nursing, you'll have to take an additional test called the TEAS test. So all things that you'll want to talk to the school about, work with your admissions counselor, and figure out what part of these application requirements will be specific to you. Not every student is going to have to submit the same thing. So making sure that you're not falling behind and making sure that you're up to date with everything that you need to submit to make sure you're on track to meet those application deadlines. Because as soon as you miss that is when you fall into or get into some trouble. So making sure that you kind of are in the right categories when you visit campus, ask the questions. That's what they're there for. You want to make sure that you're getting all of your questions answered while you're on campus. So for Running Start or eStart, this is a great opportunity for you as students to start earning some college credit while you're in high school. You would be taking these classes right in the high school classroom, so you don't have to go to a community college to take these classes. It's $150 per course. You'll save a lot of money by doing it while you're in high school, and it kind of gets you a step ahead. To kind of put it in perspective, once you've already enrolled into a school, if you look to take summer courses, that's typically an out-of-pocket expense, and they're usually charging you per credit, with a college course being about 3 to 4 credits per course. And anywhere it's usually from $200 to $250 per credit. So you're spending over $500 for one class over the summer. This is costing you about $150, and it will go right towards essentially your elective credits when you enroll into an institution. So if it's an opportunity that you would like to take advantage of, I suggest talking to your guidance office and seeing what programs that Concord High has for Running Start courses that you could take. Work with your guidance counselor, they'll have a ton of information on it, and to see what programs that you guys have here right at the high school. So at this point, when you already have an idea of where you might want to attend, you've kind of developed that list or have an idea of where you might want to look, go visit campus. When I worked in admissions, this was my focal point. I kind of was in charge of our campus visit program, so I always am a huge advocate for getting on campus and taking a tour. You can do your research online, you can take the virtual tours. That's where they're trying to impress you. They're putting all the glitz and the glamour, the pretty pictures and all that kind of stuff. Once you're on campus, you'll get a very good idea if that's going to be a good school for you. You want to see how students interact in the dining hall. What is it like to attend a basketball game on their campus? So the more you can actually get on their campus and get a feel for what it's like to be a student, it could very much sway your decision on whether or not you want to pursue that with your application. And you'll know right away. After you take that 60-minute tour, you'll know if you want to be here. And that could be something that you want to use to make that decision process when it comes to how many schools do you want to apply to. Working with those college admissions officers is going to be super beneficial as well. Anyone attend a college fair already? Yeah. So those people behind the table that you talk to, they're here for a reason. So they're in charge of recruiting you. It is their job to make sure or try to get you to enroll into their institution. So by meeting with them and filling out those inquiry cards, that's how you get bombarded with emails. If you put your parents' email, that's why they get bombarded with emails and then they get mad at you. They're trying to gauge how interested you are in that institution. And they'll keep track. They'll identify how many times you visit campus, if you come to an open house. And you very well could get scholarship money simply by visiting campus. Right now we're reviewing a lot of financial aid award letters, and we're seeing scholarships awarded from schools that simply because that student visited campus. So again, simply by just getting out there and getting your feet on their institution could be some scholarship money. But working with those admissions officers, they're the ones that are reviewing your application. They're the ones that are making that decision on whether or not you are going to be accepted or denied. So the more FaceTime you kind of have with them, the more conversations you have with them, the more they can identify who you are. They want to put a face to your application. They want to know who they're reading about. So by working with them, it's only going to help you. Admissions people are nice. When we talk about financial aid, they're kind of the not so nice ones. They're the ones that give you the bad news, or it could be good news. Admissions is there to help you. They want to hear from you. So the more you kind of get a FaceTime with them, the more beneficial it's going to be going throughout this process. I'll leave this slide up here for a couple minutes. These are a couple college fairs that are going to be coming up that you guys could very well attend. The one that's coming up for most recently is going to be held at Pinkerton Academy on April 12th from 6 to 8. There will probably be about 100 to 150 schools there. It's a pretty big college fair they hold in their field house. It's free to attend. You guys don't have to pay to go to it, so you guys can go right up to Derry and go to that college fair. If you're looking for a much bigger college fair experience, right down in Boston at their exhibition center is going to be about 1,000 different schools, both domestically and internationally. So if you have thought about going to school in a different country, there will be schools there for that as well. That's a 2-day event, so the dates and times are on this slide as well. And then later on in May, up at Keene State, there's going to be another college fair as well. The one at Keene State, we also hold them, or NHHEAF holds them in the fall as well. So when you guys are seniors, it's usually held at either Southern New Hampshire or UNH, so a little bit more locally. But those usually have about 200 to 250 schools at them. So these are a couple of the dates and the times that you guys could go to. Yeah. For families, no. No, they charge the schools to attend, but not the students and families, no. So at this point, what I want to draw your attention to is the last bullet on this, is considering the type of financial aid that's offered. This is a very important question that you want to ask going through your college application process, is do they offer merit scholarship money, or do they only offer need-based financial aid? Not every school is going to offer you merit scholarship money. There are some schools that we call full need schools that are not going to have any merit money to give you. So whether you have a 4.0 or a 3.0, they're not going to give you merit scholarship money. They're strictly a need-based school. So it's something important to know. So while you're developing your list, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the opportunity to receive merit scholarship money. That's based off of your grades, your SAT scores, class rank, all those different kind of academic performances. So making sure that the schools that you're looking at either offer both or only one. So kind of identifying that right away. At this point, you probably want to look at what kind of balance you have as opposed to public and private. Typically, those private schools are going to have that higher price tag. They're going to have more financial aid to offer you. The state schools or the public schools are going to have a lower cost of attendance, as opposed to a private school where you're looking at a higher cost of attendance. So kind of identifying that going throughout your search process as well. And at this point, we have developed a 2-2-2 approach when it comes to making your list. So when it comes down to what schools do I actually want to apply to, we will have the students that apply to 15 schools. That's okay. We recommend anywhere about 6 to 8 schools to make your life a lot easier when it comes to you getting accepted to these schools, and you don't have to decide between 12 as opposed to maybe 6 or 7. So when we look at this 2-2-2 approach, we look at 2 probable schools, or safety schools, 2 target schools, and 2 reach schools. Now, these can be very different from student to student, so it's kind of identifying who you are academically and not kind of comparing yourself one to the other. So when we look at probable or safety schools, your academic performance is slightly above their average. So if their average GPA of an incoming student is a 3.2, you're probably a 3.4 or 3.5. This is a high likely chance that you very well could receive a merit scholarship. So that would be a safety school. If you're looking at a target school, you're right on track. You are the typical first-year student that is applying to that institution. And then if you're looking at the reach schools, this is where it gets kind of tricky, because a reach school could very well be based off of their academic qualifications, but it also could just be based on how many applicants they get per year. If anyone interested in applying to BU, I always get one. There it is. BU gets about 50,000 applications per year, and they accept about 13,000. So strictly based off of how many students are applying to that institution could make it a reach school. So not so much based off of how you stand academically, but just based off of odds. So keep that in mind when you're looking at what is identified as a reach school. It could very well be academic based, but it also could be just based off of odds. So kind of looking at that list and kind of developing it that way. That's where we kind of get the most questions, is what is a reach school? Every student should have them. We encourage the reach school education that you guys can apply to. So as long as you have a good balance is what we're looking for when we meet with students. This graphic you see here, this is right from the Big Future website. So on there, they're going to be reporting data based off of that previous year's incoming class. So these grayed out boxes, and I know you guys probably can't see these numbers, but this is based off of SAT scores for this particular institution. If you're in those grayed out boxes, that's your goal. That's where you want to be. That's what the incoming class of that previous year, those were the kind of the test scores that those students fell into. So for this particular institution, if you were between an 1140 and a 1310, you were a typical SAT scored student for that incoming class. If you found yourself right below that box, then you'd probably be in that reach, maybe a target school. If you found yourself slightly above the box, then that would be more of a probable or target school. So we look on that website a lot. It's all about what the schools report, so it is self-reporting. If you're anyone interested in UConn, I always get one for UConn too. No, really? UConn doesn't report anything. So if you go to Big Future and you go look at UConn, you're probably not going to get much. But most schools are very, very good about reporting this information on their website. So if you kind of want to compare yourself, if you were applying today, how would you compare to that incoming class? That's what we use Big Future for. So again, super useful tool that we use in our office. So now you want to kind of think about what do you need as part of your application. Your transcript is going to hold the most weight. It's pretty self-explanatory, is that the college admissions officers are trying to determine if you are academically qualified to succeed at that institution. So that's going to be the focal point of your application. There are going to be other things that are weighed pretty heavily. I think your college essay is weighed a lot more heavily than it used to be. They're trying to see how your writing skills are. How do you deliver that message? It might not be so much what your topic is, but how do you deliver that message is what the admissions counselors are looking for. We hold a summer program in our office, which I'll touch on a little bit later, that has everything to do with the college essay, what makes a good or versus a bad essay, and what you should or should not be writing about. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Your extracurricular activities, you only are allowed 10 on the Common App, so we're not looking as an admissions counselor, we're not looking to see everything that you've done in your entire life. What really exemplifies who you are is what you're going to want to list on that application. Letters of recommendation, usually schools require anywhere from 2 to 3. I suggest do not wait to the last minute when it comes to asking teachers and guidance counselors, because they have to write a lot of them. And oftentimes with your application, the admissions officers at these institutions will not review them until they are complete. And if they are complete by having 2 letters of recommendation and you're waiting on that one from that English teacher, that could hold up your application. So the earlier you're out asking your teachers and your guidance counselors, the more beneficial it's going to be. And then lastly, your SAT or ACT scores if they are required. So if they're not required, you don't have to send them in. If you feel like it will boost your application, feel free. The schools will not penalize you if they are a test optional school for sending in your scores. It could only help you. So make sure you're sending them in if they are required, but if not, it's kind of up to you if you want to send them in. This brings us the ways to apply. So there's really 4. The first one we'll start with is early decision. I don't really see a lot of it, and I'm not a huge fan of it. It is a binding contract. It's like a binding contract. You can only apply to one school early decision, and if you get into that school, you are obligated to attend. You would then at that point have to resend any other application that you sent out. You will not receive or be able to look at any financial aid packages from any other school that you may have been accepted to, and you're making this decision off of not knowing what financial aid you're getting from that school. So if you're applying early decision, this is typically your dream school. You know finances are not an option. You know whatever it's going to be, you're able to pay for it. If you can't really say yes to either one of those options, you probably want to stay away from early decision, because again, it is binding. You are obligated to attend that college or university if you are accepted to that school. What we do see a lot of is early action, very similar to early decision, however, it's non-binding. So you can apply to as many schools early action as you want. You still have the choice. You can still have the opportunity to review acceptance letters and review financial aid packages from every school that you've been accepted to. Typically, these deadlines are a lot earlier. You're usually submitting these applications anytime before Thanksgiving or the winter holiday. And typically you're hearing back from the schools a lot earlier. Regular admission is the second most popular one. This is anywhere the applications are due between December and January or February. These are typically when you have your financial aid lines a little bit later as well. So between early action and regular admission are usually the 2 most popular ways of applying to college. And then the last one is rolling admission, where there is no hard deadline. So there are some schools that would be rolling admission where they will accept applications until their freshman class has been met. So it's on a first come, first served basis. So if you're kind of behind the 8 ball and you change your mind in the summer and you want to apply to a school in June and they're rolling admission, they will read your application. So there really is no hard deadline. They will accept until they've met their freshman class. So those are really the 4 ways of applying. The most that we see a lot of is the early action and the regular admission. Keep in mind that your admission deadlines will dictate your financial aid deadlines. So if you're applying admission early, your financial aid deadlines will be a lot earlier. The example that I always use is St. Anselm's College over in Manchester. If you're applying early action to that school, their deadline was December 15th and for admission, and their financial aid deadline was February 1st. If you applied regular admission, their financial aid deadline was March 1st. So earlier admission, earlier financial aid. So on page 14, I believe, of these booklets, we've given you guys a little, almost like an Excel spreadsheet where you guys can list up to 5 schools where you can keep track of your admission and financial aid deadlines. Being organized is going to be your best friend throughout this process, because as soon as you start missing deadlines is when you run into trouble. So by being the most organized that you can throughout this process, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So we've given you guys that graph on one of those pages as well. So once the student has submitted their application, it is now their responsibility to keep in contact with the school. So making sure that their applications have been complete, staying in contact with admissions, making sure that they have all the information that they need. If they haven't been to campus yet, they want to hear from the student. They love when students kind of book their own campus tours, or they're picking up the phone as opposed to mom and dad, aunt and uncle, grandpa. They want to hear from the student. The student is the one that's going to be attending the college or university. So it goes a long way when the student is picking up the phone and having that conversation with the college or university. making sure that they're doing what they can now in high school to make sure that they're working with the correct people in the guidance office and their teachers on making sure that their transcripts have been sent, their recommendations have been wrote, being self-advocating for themselves. At this point, it's good preparation for when they go to school. They're gonna be kind of on their own, living on campus, making sure that they have to make sure they're going to class at 8 a.m., not mom or dad waking them up in the morning to make sure they go to school. They wanna kind of instill these practices now. So once they submit their application is when they really wanna take ownership of this process. I mean, that's when the schools really are looking to hear from them. Briefly talking on financial aid, so there's really two forms that you're going to have to fill out throughout this process. When it comes to financial aid, the FAFSA form, or that free application for federal student aid, this becomes available on October 1st of every year. So you won't be able to fill it out until then. This does not mean you have to fill it out on October 1st or October 2nd. It's available until that deadline for that institution. But if you want to be eligible for any sort of financial aid, this is the form that you will need to fill out. It's always going to be looking at 2 years back of tax information. So for the seniors that we were working with this year, they were filling out the 2018-2019 FAFSA form, and we were working off of the family's 2016 tax information. And that will always be the case. So for when you guys go out throughout this process, you'll be filling out the 2019-2020 FAFSA form. You'll be using your 2017 taxes. And it's what the feds call prior. You're always going to be using 2 years back of tax information. And now we run into the questions where, what if that tax year is not a good representation of where the family is financially now? You'll have to request a form which is called a special circumstance form, which is with the school. And again, this is all information that we talk more in depth about in the fall, but just to give you guys an idea, that's the form you'll need to fill out. But if you want to be eligible for financial aid, the FAFSA is where you're going to start. The second form is called the CSS profile. Not every school requires this form. About 450 schools nationwide require this. The only schools in New Hampshire that require it are St. A's and Dartmouth. However, if you go south of our border into Massachusetts and the rest of New England, you're going to see that they are very CSS profile heavy. So you're going to see the BUs, the BCs, the Northeasterns, the Syracuse, the Holy Cross, very high academic qualified students that are applying to these schools. So they have to determine how to allocate that institutional money appropriately. So for the FAFSA form, it's about 100 questions. Takes about 30, 45 minutes. The CSS profile is about 350 questions, and they're also looking at about 3 years worth of tax information. So it is a much longer form. So when it kind of goes back to talking and developing that college list, you want to make sure you're kind of identifying which schools require that CSS profile and which ones don't, because you want to give yourself the opportunity to see variety when it comes to financial aid. If you're applying to 10 schools that all require the CSS profile, you're not going to see much variety when it comes to financial aid because you've given all 10 of those schools all of your information financially. There's nothing that you can really hide on that form. With the FAFSA, we're not going to be looking at anything to do with your retirement or anything to do with your primary home, and a lot of your assets are going to be protected. With the CSS profile, nothing is protected. They will look at everything. So identifying which schools require this form and how many of them are you applying to can very well dictate what you're going to see in financial aid. So that's another thing that we look for when it comes to the students' college list, is how many of them are CSS profile schools, and are they giving themselves a chance to see variety when it comes to financial aid. Again, these forms become available October 1st. You can't fill it out until then. And I always get the question of, if you fill it out earlier, am I going to get more financial aid? And the answer is yes and no. As long as you're meeting your financial aid deadlines, you're going to be eligible for that amount of money that you are deemed eligible based off of the information that you've put. But for a family that fills it out on October 2nd, as opposed to a family that fills it out in November, and both of their deadlines are February 1st, that family in October isn't necessarily going to get more money than that family that filled it out in November just because they filled it out earlier. They've both met the financial aid deadline. So it's all going to depend on how much you're eligible for in financial aid. So that's what the importance is about meeting your deadlines. As long as you're meeting them, then you're going to be eligible for what the FAFSA deems you eligible for. And how you're eligible for that is based off of what's called an EFC, which is your expected family contribution. And what that number is what the federal government has determined that you can afford for your child's first year of school. And you will disagree with this number. I will tell you that. And if any parents have been through this before, you're going to have that, wow, I can't afford this type of moment, and that's okay. That number is typically going to be a lot higher than what you assume that you can afford for that student's first year of school. And what this institution is doing with that number is that they're taking that total cost of attendance and they're subtracting your EFC. So if that school costs $50,000 to go to and your EFC is $20,000, then you're eligible for $30,000 in financial aid. And that's what they're using that number for. So if you're looking at a full need school, so I'll take Boston College, for instance, they're a full need school. So they have agreed that they will meet your full need. So if your EFC is $25,000, then you're going to pay $25,000 to go to BC. If your EFC is $100, then you're going to pay $100 per year to go to BC. So it's really, they're meeting your full need. So that's kind of what that is. And again, it's a lot of information when it comes to financial aid. We get more in depth with this conversation later on in the fall, but it kind of gives you an idea of how these forms work and how it should influence your college kind of application process. Give yourself variety. Make sure that you're applying to schools that only require the FAFSA and maybe some schools that also require the CSS profile. Because the more variety you have when it comes to being accepted, the more conversation you're going to be able to develop when it comes to what's going to be affordable for you and your family. And that's the importance of kind of what we're talking about now with seniors, is that we're reviewing these financial aid letters and students are kind of having that aha moment of, is this really what it's going to cost to go to this institution? And oftentimes they don't really think about that when they're going through the application process because their brain is so focused on, I need to get this application out. So financial aid could play a huge factor when it comes to which schools that you want to apply to. Like I said earlier, the community college is a way to save a lot of money. You'll see that by simply living at home to go to NHTI, it's about $7,800. As opposed to, let's take St. A's for example, to live on their campus is about $54,000 per year to go there. These are what I like to call your sticker prices. You'll never pay this amount to go to these schools. Financial aid will play a huge factor in this, but this is what their starting costs are. So it kind of gives you a good idea of what the cost of education is for these particular institutions. There are programs and different things out there that you can use. You can use what's called a net price calculator, which can be found on every college's website that could give you a good idea of what kind of money you could be receiving from that school based off of the information that you've put into that system. On the FAFSA website, there's also an EFC calculator. So if you're kind of interested when you get home and you want to see what your EFC could look like based off of your tax information, you could play around with that system. It's only as accurate as the information that you put in there. So just keep that in mind when it comes to using these tools, especially with the net price calculators. These are programmed by the institution themselves. So if you're finding that you're on these colleges' websites and they're not asking very many questions with their net price calculator, or if they're very vague, they probably haven't put a lot of effort into that net price calculator. But if you're looking at another school that they're asking you a lot of pretty detailed questions, then you could assume that they've put the effort into making that calculator so that it will give you a good representation of what you could be receiving from that school. So again, these are resources that are available to you that are on these websites that you can use any day while you're at home. And then for the scholarship portion, which is what the senior class is working on right now, is different scholarship opportunities that could bring that cost down. You can look on the national level, you can look on College Board, you can look on fastweb.com. The likelihood of you receiving a scholarship is going to be significantly less as opposed to looking locally. Local organizations want to help local kids. There could be a lot of good opportunities right through the Concord School District that you could take advantage of. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is another great resource for different scholarship opportunities. Typically, this is around, when these applications become available, it's right around the February timeline. And during your senior year, it's right around that time where, for any students in the room, your senior friends have senioritis. It's a thing. I know, it's definitely a thing. It's when you really don't want to do anything else with your college search process. You've submitted your applications, you've done financial aid, you kind of just want to be done. That's where a lot of the money is left on the table. Typically, there is an essay component to these scholarship applications, and students don't want to write another essay. They don't want to fill out another application, and that's where the money's left on the table. So I encourage the juniors to really, when it's this time during their senior year, to apply to as many scholarships as possible. It's only going to help you. It's free money. Typically, all you're going to have to do is, if you are awarded a scholarship from a donor, you have to just let them know where you're going to be attending. And they'll simply cut the check and send it to the institution, and it will come right off of your tuition. It's as simple as that. There's really no limit on how many scholarships you can apply to. So if it's $500 here, $250 there, $600 there, that's all going to add up. And it's going to start bringing that bottom line, or what it's going to cost to go to that school, down significantly. So work with your guidance office, start with your school district, see what opportunities are available right through Concord High. Look on the Charitable Foundation's website. A lot of these scholarship opportunities will be looking at your need, so you do have to have a FAFSA on file, but that doesn't mean it should discourage you from applying to these scholarships. They could have very vague scholarships that every student can apply for, but there are donors out there that very well could be looking simply for a Concord High student that is in the theater program. You might not have to have the best grades in the world, but if you're a Concord High senior and you're in the theater program, there could be a scholarship there for you. So really, get out there and apply to as many scholarships as you can during your senior year. It's only going to help you. We encourage it a lot because it's our goal as an organization to see New Hampshire students go to school for as little as possible. We do not want to see New Hampshire students at 4 years from now coming out with a ton of student debt. And that's a part of what we do in our programs, in our appointments that we do now with seniors, is that when we review these award letters, we're going to give you the 4-year value of your education, and we're going to tell you what your loan payment is going to look like, both with your federal loans and your private loans if you have to take them. And that usually is that eye-opening moment of, do I really want to pay X amount of dollars for 10 years to get that paid off? So by having those outside or private scholarships is going to take that cost of education down a little bit more. Do we have a question? Is that a question? No? Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is just some of the programs that we have over the summer. So these are, we call them summer boot camps, which is taking place in our Concord office. We have two different ones. We have one strictly for the college essay, and then one for an admissions boot camp type style feel. So much more in-depth conversation of what we just went over tonight. This is the only thing that we charge students and families for. It's $25. You'll be with us pretty much all day, right in the morning, right around 8:30, 9 o'clock until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll work with about 2 or 3 of our counselors right in our office, and we'll go right in depth with what, depending on the program that you've signed up for. So although these are happening over the summer, we're already getting people that are signing up for these. So if you are interested in having your student attend, or if a student's in the room and they're looking to attend, you would just call us and you can sign up for that. With the essay one, it's strictly focusing on that college essay, developing what you've worked on already, or if you haven't worked on anything, we're going to give you some topics to write about. We'll go over what college admissions is looking for when it comes to a college essay. What are the good, what are the not so good topics to write about? We're going to kind of discuss all of that, not only individually, but as a group as well. And then with the admissions one, we'll give you kind of a binder that you can take home that will keep you as organized as you possibly can. It's something that we develop right in our office. So if this is something that you are looking to attend, just give us a call, register for that. We're already taking people for that. And then one of the last things is Our Destination College event, which some people might already be signed up for, this is happening this Saturday on April 7th at Southern New Hampshire University. If you go on to our website, the registration is already down because we've closed it. However, if you have not signed up and you want to attend, you can just simply give us a call and we can see what we still have available. This is free for families. It's from 8:30 to 2:30 on Snooze campus. There's a bunch of sessions that you can attend, as well as a college fair from 12:30 to 2 o'clock, where we have about 70 schools around New England that will be attending this fair. So this is this Saturday from 8:30 to 2 on Snooze campus. Does anyone have any questions about what we went over tonight, or if they had any questions that they came in here with that weren't necessarily answered? Yeah. That's at Keene State College, and I can I'll skip back to that slide here. Right there. Yep. So that's from 9 to 11 at Keene State College. Sure, it's a great question. So the question was, how do you figure EFC with 2 students in college? So your EFC is when it comes to FAFSA, it's very income based. So it's really focused on that adjusted gross, the wages and things like that. There's a huge formula on the back end that kind of deals with a couple other different components. Your assets, and what I mean by that is what you have in the bank for checking and savings accounts, any liquid assets that you have, such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money markets, 529 plans. When it comes to FAFSA, there's a certain amount of money that is protected, and it's based off of the age of the eldest parent in the household. So if that parent is 48 years old, then there's a certain amount of money that's protected based off of their age. Anything above and beyond that will be looked at a certain percentage. So when you're on the FAFSA form, there's going to be a question that says, as of today, do your parents' assets exceed X amount of dollars? If they don't, so when you get to that question, you think, okay, what do I have in the bank? What are my assets? If they don't exceed that, then you simply click no and you move on. If they do exceed that number, then you're going to click yes, and it breaks down into 3 different categories. It's what you have in the bank for cash savings and checking. What are your investments, so those liquid assets, and then if you own a business that's over 100 employees, you have to report the value of that. So kind of a combination of your income and whatever asset information that you've reported is coming up with that EFC number. Now, if you have 2 students in college, that EFC is going to be split in half. So let's just say you have 1 student, you apply, and your EFC is $20,000. And the next year you have another child that's going through the process, and income and assets have not changed, then you could assume that EFC will be cut in half, and there'll be $10,000 for 1 student, $10,000 for the other. So it does take into consideration how many are in college at one time. But there's a huge formula that is on the studentloans.gov website that you can look to see how the EFC is calculated. But it's a long formula, and I don't know the whole thing. But it's a combination of your income and your asset information and how many are going to school at that time. Yep.
Talk about subsequent years. We'll give capital for the first year. Any assurances that
the cost for moving forward. Yeah, so the question was, are there any situations where you can kind of have a good idea of what it's going to cost moving forward once you've kind of identified what that first year cost is going to be? When it comes to the financial aid and scholarship money, to kind of keep it as simple as possible, usually a merit scholarship comes with a GPA component. So as long as you're maintaining that GPA requirement, that scholarship should still be there for all 4 years. So if you receive a $4,000 scholarship and you need to maintain a 3.0, as long as you've maintained that 3.0, then that's a $12,000 value. When it comes to financial aid, that is where the money can kind of fluctuate. So financial aid is obviously need-based. So you could have a portion of that financial aid which is in the form of a grant. A grant is institutional money based off of your need, and that's the number that can really fluctuate, because if your EFC goes up, your need is going to go down. So if you receive a grant from a particular institution, that is money that could vary from year to year. So when it comes to kind of having a stability, when it comes to financial aid, it's really determined once you get that bill, once you've done that process throughout your 4 years. So there is some consistency to it. Tuition prices usually do go up by a little bit every single year. We're not talking $5,000 to $10,000 per year, but we're talking a certain percentage. So there is some consistency when it comes to merit scholarship money. When it comes to grant money, that could be the number that fluctuates a little bit depending on your financial aid and what you're showing for need. Is that going to answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
The early action versus the regular admission, to what degree does that increase the student's chances?
That's a good question. So the question was the difference between early action and regular admission. How does that increase kind of your odds and things like that? So by applying early action, it really shows the school how interested you are in that particular institution. By applying early action doesn't necessarily increase your odds of getting accepted, because really they're looking at your application requirements. They're assessing your transcript, your SAT scores, so it's really showing how interested you are in that school. It's also allowing you the opportunity to have more time when it comes to the spring to evaluate what schools you've been accepted to, evaluate the financial aid award letters, and have more time to make that decision. The universal deadline to make your decision is May 1st. So by applying early action, you're typically hearing back from the schools, both admission and financial aid, a lot earlier. So you're giving yourself more time to make that decision. So does it help you? Yes and no, but it's really based off of your application materials that you've submitted. Schools like to see early action because it shows that you're interested in them. But does it play a factor? Does it increase your odds of being accepted? Not really. That's based off of your application material and whether or not you're going to be accepted or not. For their junior and senior year? Yeah, absolutely. We don't start meeting with students until their junior year, but there's no set amount of appointments that they could have. If they want to come meet with us once and be done, fine. If they want to meet with us 15 times, cool. But yeah, every appointment that we do is free, so there's no restrictions on how many times you can meet with us. We just don't start meeting with students until after May 1st of their junior year, and that's because at that point they've probably received their SAT scores, and we want to kind of get a good idea of where they stand academically and how that plays a factor in the schools that they're looking at. Yeah. But kind of how our appointments work is that we start with a college prep appointment, which is usually going into their senior year. Once October hits, if you are kind of uneasy about doing the FAFSA, if it's a difficult process for you, if it's overwhelming, we do FAFSA appointments in our office where if you just bring the information that we ask for, we'll fill out the FAFSA with you guys and you'll get it submitted right in our office. We do that for free. When it comes to when you've been accepted and you start receiving award letters, we'll have you come to our office and we'll review them with you. We'll essentially break down everything that you've received for financial aid. We'll give you the bottom line on what it's going to cost for that year. We'll look at the 4-year value, and we'll also give you an idea of what your loan payment would look like before you make that enrollment decision come May 1st. So those are all the appointments that we do throughout the year for students and families in our office. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Well, I thank you guys for taking the time to meet with me. There is a part 2 of this, so Ms. Slick is going to come down and kind of explain that. But thank you guys. If you guys have questions, feel free to give us a call. My card is out on that table. I saw many of you take that. So if you're looking to make an appointment, just give us a call or shoot me an email. I work with all Concord students. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. But again, thank you guys very much for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Hi, thank you. My name is Karen Slick. I'm one of the guidance counselors. I think I started here probably about the time DIRT was invented, so I have been around the college application process many, many years, so has my curtain. And the guidance department as a whole has gone through many, many years of experience with applications. A couple things that I wanted to comment on what was presented. So at the college fairs, one of the things that I really like to emphasize with students is that the people who are behind those tables are oftentimes the people who are making decisions on the applications. So we try to help kids prepare for those college fairs so that they represent themselves well. There's a good handshake, there's good eye contact. If there's any specific questions that they want to ask, we help prepare your kids for that. So please ask them to come and see us. We work with juniors all the time, getting them ready for these college fairs and college visits. And we like to have them going as prepared as we can help them be, because that helps eliminate the stress. College tours. I love college tours. When we get kids onto campuses, that's when we get to see what they really like. And I can tell you, when I had my own 2 kids go through this process, I learned very quickly that their impression about what stood out about the campus or the dorm rooms and what they liked was not always what I liked or kind of stood out to me. So it's really important to listen to what stands out for your son or daughter. I've soon found out that I did not like dirty dorm rooms, and my kids didn't seem to notice that. And so, but I didn't realize that till we got well into the process. So those are the kinds of things we can help you with. We prepare kids oftentimes one-on-one when they are talking to college reps and visiting colleges, and we want them to be prepared for that so that they get comfortable with that and they're very used to the questions and the information. So to help a little bit with the stress, anybody here first time through the process, the college application process? Oh, welcome, this is so exciting. So it's very exciting, and we love this part of our jobs, but with that excitement comes a little bit of stress. And so to help with that just a little bit, we thought we would have you talk to some seniors who are at the tail end of this process, and to come on down if you would like, and some parents who are also fresh off the process or still in the process. So I'm going to hand off a mic. Make sure that's on. We'll just do some pass the mic information. Come on down. There's one more seat for you. Thank you so much for coming. And if you have questions for them, I am sure they would love to hear them. So, Gabby Evans, you can start us off with your name. Why don't you give us your name and what your plans are for next year?
My name is Gabby Evans, and I'm looking to major in molecular biology, and I have yet to decide where to go to college.
My name is Jaylon. I applied to 5 schools, and I'm committed to UNC Wilmington in the fall, and I'm hopefully double majoring in bio and psych.
My name is Hannah. I'm going to Southern New Hampshire University to do construction management.
I'm Jacob, and I don't know where I'm going to college yet, but I'm thinking I'm going to do something in the sciences, mostly biology. So,
I'm Elijah. I'm thinking of majoring in most likely government, and right now I'm deciding between Dartmouth and Middlebury.
Hi, my name is Angela, and I have a senior this year, and I had a senior last year, so I'm fresh off the boat.
Hi, I'm Jen, and Elijah is my senior.
Hi, I'm Janine, and Gabby is my senior.
Janine, maybe you could start us off. Could you just give a quick summary, real brief summary, I guess, of what it was like, this college process, going through it as a parent? Because I know some nervous parents out there.
So I think my best advice I could say is just have to go with the flow there, because it's definitely going to be a wild ride. And with Gabby, our experience has been just not sure. She definitely knows about the sciences, loves the sciences. I encouraged her to definitely apply no matter what, but she's also the big basketball player and had thoughts of maybe going to post-grad, and that's still on the table. So it's been a very different process for us, but I would encourage you, you're already doing the right thing by being here, doing things early if that's what your child is at. But I've kind of let Gabby take the lead. And so it's been a little bit difficult that way, because she did apply regular admission, and it seems to us that did make a difference for some of her schools in getting in. She's waitlisted at 2 schools right now, so I think that's great, but she was a little bit disappointed. So I'm not going to hog the whole show here. So next.
Thank you.
Sure, I'd say from our perspective, it was definitely an adventure. Elijah definitely can see a lot of positives in everything, so it makes decision making a little bit more challenging from that perspective. However, we kind of embraced that as an exploration process of getting to visit different towns and cities, different schools. We try to mix it up and do small schools in small rural communities and absolutely immense schools. I think GW was possibly the largest and most urban in DC that we visited, just trying to get a mix of things. So from that aspect, it was definitely a big adventure. Then, going through the whole application process, definitely a lot of stressful moments and then really quiet waiting moments. And so trying to balance that and kind of fit the workload into the academic and extracurricular schedule made it fun.
We also had a kind of a crazy fall, and last year we actually started in the spring touring for my daughter. And it has been a process. She has been stressed and plagued with questions. Where am I going to get in? Have I done enough extracurricular activities? Is my scores high enough? So be patient with your student. They are under a lot of stress. And I would say every student needs a plan B. Like your number one college may not be your number one when you're done touring. That could end up being your number 5. You could totally swap ends. So just be realistic about your expectations.
Elijah, starting with you, could you talk a little bit about one thing that worked really, really well for you in the college application process?
Sure. So in terms of like the actual grunt work of the application process, the essays, filling the Common App out, I thought that went very well. I had plenty of help from guidance counselors and English teachers who are more than willing to help you out. And I felt, by the time I hit submit on those applications, like I was prepared, which went very well.
One thing I found very helpful for the application process is to get teacher recommendations early. So I believe one of them, I asked semester 2 of my junior year, which would be now for you guys, for one of my English teachers, and I found that gave the teacher enough time to write a really well written recommendation for me, and also gave me other ideas on who I should also ask for other recommendations if I should get more science teachers or more English teachers. The sooner you start on that, the better it turns out for you.
I think one thing that was really helpful to me was using the resources I had, whether it be online, the Common App, using teachers, your guidance counselors. There's a lot of things online that can help you pick which colleges would be a better fit for you. There's things for scholarships, and just using everything that guidance counselors, teachers, things like this can really be very helpful in this decision.
I think that me visiting colleges earlier, like during my junior year, and then starting my college applications and my essay especially helped a lot, because when I went into my junior year, I could have my English teachers, my guidance counselor, and all the teachers that I trusted and knew would give me good feedback without bias, to fix my college essay up and make sure that it was perfect and the right topic and that it would catch the admission counselor's attention, which was very helpful.
For me, particularly where I was applying to pretty competitive schools, I got a head start on my SAT and ACT scores, because if you do want to score higher, it requires a lot of practice and time and effort. So getting a head start on that really helped to boost my scores and make me a more competitive applicant.
And we'll go right back down. One thing that you found that was frustrating or didn't work out well, because I think, again, there's some folks here that they just want to know, is it something we should avoid or a pitfall?
For me, it's really getting a head start. I did not do that for my scores I did, but in terms of my essay and my application as a whole, I didn't get a head start. So towards the end, as deadlines were approaching, it got really, really stressful. So just getting a head start on those things can make it a lot easier.
So I did apply early action, but I play a fall sport, so it was very stressful for me to balance like applying and getting all my applications in. I was that student who turned in my applications the day before it was due. So I think what was frustrating was time managing and making sure I had my priorities straight. So yeah.
Picking somewhere that fit to apply to was kind of hard for me because I didn't get my feet on a lot of the campuses that I really I thought I'd like, and when I did, sometimes it would sway my opinion. In colleges I didn't think I'd like, I became top choices. Colleges I had fell in love with over the online tours became colleges I no longer loved. So I think starting your junior year, getting your feet on campus, realizing what they have, what they don't have, what you like and what you dislike will make your application process a little easier.
My biggest pitfall with the application progress was the application itself. I am a major procrastinator, and I did it. I applied to all the colleges that I wanted to, but I could have done it way sooner and way easier. It wasn't stressful. It was just annoying to remember, oh, hey, I should probably finish the essays and all the fill in the blanks. So it's like that thing in the back of your mind that bugs you
Or your
every so
guidance
often.
counselor yelling.
Yeah, or that. But try not to procrastinate as much.
So I had one specific instance of not quite understanding how to send my test scores to my schools, which made for an incredibly stressful Christmas vacation. I worked throughout my junior year summer, getting a head start on these things, doing research about colleges, visiting campuses, things like that. But I didn't necessarily make much of a plan. I just kind of threw myself into it. So I did not anticipate that particular pitfall, as Jacob put it.
I would say my daughter's biggest challenge was that she waited too long to take her SAT scores and her ACT scores serious. So it wasn't until she got closer and closer, like, oh geez, I might have to take these again, that she really buckled down and started to study. So if you can study early, do it.
Excellent.
So I follow up on what Elijah had already said about his pitfalls, and somewhat related. He's extremely independent, and so we kind of took a step back and we let him take the lead. And so our pitfall was we weren't necessarily checking in with him as much as we should have along the process, and then we realized, oh my gosh, we almost missed a deadline in getting some test scores sent to a couple schools that were highly ranked on his list at the time that he was applying. So so from that end, we realized, okay, well, we do need to check in a little bit more frequently on what are the deadlines. And so we came up with a little parenting strategy to kind of overcome that communication hurdle. And we're spreadsheet nerds in my house. So we created a spreadsheet that was in a cloud storage so that we could share it between Elijah and I. And so for every school, he had all of the deadlines listed out, and not just like when the application itself was due, but when financial aid was due, when we needed to get the test scores out. And so each time step in the process was completed, he'd fill in and say, put the date that that task was completed, and that helped us stay on the same page so that I could quickly check and go, okay, he's on target. Ooh, we've got some deadlines coming up. We need to follow up on this.
Yeah, I can totally agree. Gabby's very independent as well, and I kind of let her take the lead. So two things that I wish we had done differently was visit more schools sooner in the game to give her a sense of what, she was applying for. Some of them were too far away, and we just couldn't do that. But the other piece is the spreadsheet. Gabby was really great at making a spreadsheet initially. Didn't get the deadlines on there right away, but we got there. And one of the things that was surprising to me was not only the FAFSA piece in terms of the financial aid form, but there were several schools that had to contact us after to say, you can do the CSS too. And that was actually much easier than the FAFSA, but we were freaking out a little bit thinking, oh my gosh, how did we not follow through with this piece? So there's so many little chunks that spreadsheet certainly is a great way to go.
Our last round of questions, and then you can open up for questions in a second. One quick piece of advice or recommendation.
I would say to really plan ahead in terms of your essays, not just in your personal essays, but also the majority of my colleges had additional essays. One of them had 3, so those pile up. So really prepare ahead of time for those.
Mine would be to fill out your FAFSA as early as you possibly can. You will get your financial aid rewards probably quicker. Some schools you won't. And also look for scholarships a lot, very soon, because deadlines start ending around this time and sometimes earlier in the following year. So I wish I had done that. So look for scholarships and get as many as you possibly can, because college is expensive.
Get your feet on campus. That's one thing I totally recommend. And get on email lists for colleges to see the events so you can kind of get a feel of what they have to offer, things they have to do. And the application process can be expensive. And visiting campuses, a lot of the time they'll give you fee waivers. So that's an added bonus to being able to actually see where you're going and making the application process a little cheaper.
I would suggest chunkatizing the application. It's broken up into nice little sections that you can save. So if you were to say, hey, I'm going to complete this section today, you do that, you save it, and you're done for the day. And then the next day, you would complete the next section, and so on and so forth, so that you chunkatize, yeah. So you don't, yeah, that's a good word. So that you don't, you go through, look at all the information, you fill it all out, and make sure you have it all, instead of just randomly filling out different spots and making mistakes.
I would recommend making a plan. Sorry. And that doesn't necessarily mean knowing where you want to go by the end of this year, because I think I added and subtracted schools from the list of colleges that I had on the Common App the week before I was submitting my applications. But it's mostly about knowing when all the universal things are happening, the Common App, the FAFSA, your test scores, and getting on researching what colleges you want to go to, and finding ones that you're actually excited about.
Thank you. So we'll take questions in a couple minutes. I wanted to address a couple things that the kids talked about. One of the things that we will help you and your students through is the stress management that we heard about, the time management. We can help that process. We can help with that. And if you have questions and you're not feeling totally connected, or you feel like you want to come in and have a meeting, we will meet with you, your son or daughter. We can meet with you without your son or daughter. We will meet with your kids very, very often. The guidance department, this is our kickoff for our juniors. And we are going into junior English 11 classes the 17th and 18th of April. And we will be meeting with our own caseload of kids, and we're trying to get our internet person to help us connect with a resume building capability, so your sons and daughters will be able to create a resume, which if they're going out to the world of work would be helpful, but also when they're going to do the Common Application, they can pull that information right off the resume and put it right onto the Common App. So it's sort of a bit of an organizer for that as well. And then our hope is that the students out here, you're going to be going off on weekends and over April vacation to look at colleges and get your feet on the ground, as they say. So are there any questions for these kids? You guys did a great job. Hold on. Mike, can you, never mind. hold on, I'm trying to get a microphone. Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, I'm sorry, next lady on the end, was talking about the last comment you just made about filling out the FAFSA and then having schools contact you to say that you could do the other one. Did you mean that you had to do the other one also?
About this whole process. Sorry, do I have to really use this? What's interesting is that most of the contact was through Gabby. So the colleges, that whole piece of it, I wasn't really expecting either. Their emails, they have to be on the portal of the college to look for any kind of information. So you have to check your email almost daily once that process started. So Gabby was emailed by the college to say, we would really like, you're missing a few documents, we would really like your CSS so we can, work on financial information.
So they get if they were required and they were looking, it wasn't like, oh, if you would like to submit that, we would like that. I know we need it and it's just like. Any other quick questions? Because I know yes.
Can I just really quick, the timing, some of you mentioned you wish you would have started testing earlier, or you wish you did too late. What would you recommend in terms of how many times you take it, or?
Take the SAT or ACT?
Yeah.
I'm going to field that one if that's okay with you guys. And they can talk about the timing of it. Most juniors in our school have taken the SAT. We like the SAT to get one and done. It's a reasoning test. Most colleges that we work with will take either the SAT or the ACT, but that's up to your sons and daughters or you to make sure that the colleges will take either. I often recommend for a youngster, take the SAT. You did that already in March. Take an ACT. See which one you like better because they're very different kinds of tests. And then if you want to take a second set of tests, pick the ACT or the SAT and take that in the early fall. Some colleges will be looking for SAT 2s, which are 1-hour subject tests. And again, have your son or daughter come and talk to us because we can help them through that decision-making process. Did you want to add anything about this? Yes, go ahead.
So I actually knew we were taking our SAT through the school in April of last year, so I took mine in January, looked at my score, looked at what I needed to do better, and then I took it again with the school, and then after that I took and within that I also took my ACT. So when I took my ACT, I did better on my ACT than my SAT, so don't submit both of your scores if you did better on one, because they have converters of like what an ACT score is to an SAT and an SAT to an ACT. So if you can figure out which one is your better score, don't submit it if you do not have to,
right? Because
then it can just turn into a mess.
And we can help sort that out, absolutely. Yep, last question, hold on.
I can speak up. The parents or the students' parents, did you guys, anybody use a third party type, like for some support and good, bad, worth it, not worth it? Okay. And you're a basketball player, how about like a recruiter? Do you go through that process? Okay.
Yeah.
I just,
The cost difference between community college, taking the classes at community college as opposed to a four-year state school. That's going to be determined based off of the institution. So if you're looking to take them outside of the regular fall semester or spring semester, the cost of it is determined by the institution. So that's going to vary from school to school. Typically doing stuff at a community college is more than likely going to be the cheaper option, but I would talk to the specific school to see how much it's going to cost to go there or to take that class. But again, that's going to vary from school to school.
All right. So I'm going to thank you. I want to thank these guys. They did a great job. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The parents. Thank you all for coming this evening. Mr. Curtin, Mike Curtin, and I will be here. If you have questions, feel free to come down right now. We'll try to help you out as much as we can. Thanks and have a great night.